Hello and welcome to What the F Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditas. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Welcome to day 1155. Joe Biden and House Republicans reached a deal to fund the government, but Congress may not have enough time to pass the legislation before a partial shutdown begins this weekend. House rules require 72 hours between when legislation is made public and when members can vote, which means that the chamber can't take up the bill until late Friday. The Senate, meanwhile, requires 30 hours of debate unless all 100 senators give consent to move faster, meaning any one senator can slow down consideration. Funding for several key agencies expires at midnight on Friday. The 6 spending bills in the package collectively fund about 70% of the federal government. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court will allow Texas to immediately begin enforcing a controversial immigration law giving state police the power to arrest people who they suspect of crossing the border illegally. The ruling doesn't uphold the law, but it does allow it to go into effect while litigation continues in lower courts. A federal judge in Texas struck down the law in late February, but the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reversed that decision without providing an explanation, leading to an emergency request from the Biden administration, which argued that the Texas law is a clear violation of federal authority to set immigration policy. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, joined by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, warned in a dissenting argument that the law invites further chaos and crisis in immigration enforcement and upends the federal-state balance of power that has existed for over a century, in which the national government has had exclusive authority over entry and removal of non-citizens. The law makes it a state crime to illegally cross the Texas-Mexico border, allows police to arrest migrants who they suspect of illegally crossing the border from Mexico, and imposes criminal penalties of up to 6 months in jail and up to 20 years in prison for subsequent offenses. SB 4 also empowers state judges to order deportations to Mexico without Mexico's consent. Moving on, Trump urged the Supreme Court to declare that he is absolutely immune from criminal charges for his attempts to subvert the 2020 election, which resulted in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. In a 52-page filing, Trump argued that a ruling against him would incapacitate every future president, adding, "The president cannot function, and the presidency itself cannot retain its vital independence if the president faces criminal prosecution for official acts once he leaves office." The court will hear oral arguments on the matter on April 25th. Trump also filed a defamation lawsuit against ABC News, arguing that George Stephanopoulos harmed his reputation by saying multiple times on air that Trump had raped E. Jean Carroll. The jury in the civil case last year found Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll, but didn't go as far as to find him liable for rape. Under New York law, rape is defined as forcible penetration with the penis. The judge later clarified that because of New York's narrow legal definition of rape, the jury finding didn't mean that Carroll had failed to prove that Trump raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape. Meanwhile, former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro reported to prison. Navaro, who claimed credit for the plan to overturn the 2020 election, was convicted on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to provide testimony and documents to the January 6th Select Committee. He was sentenced to 4 months in jail and ordered to pay a $9,500 fine. Before he reported to jail, Navarro called the case against him an unprecedented assault on the constitutional separation of powers, adding, "I am pissed. That's what I'm feeling right now." Navarro is the first high-ranking Trump official to serve prison time related to the January 6th Capitol riot. Meanwhile, a pro-Trump attorney who tried to overturn the 2020 election was arrested and charged with conspiring to seize Michigan voting machines after the election. Stephanie Lambert was arrested after a hearing in a separate case about her leaking internal emails from Dominion voting systems. She shared more than 2,000 confidential Dominion documents with a southwestern Michigan sheriff who has embraced conspiracy theories about the 2020 election and used his office to investigate false claims of widespread election fraud against Trump. Lambert faces 4 felony charges for accessing voting machines in Michigan. And finally, Jared Kushner praised the very valuable potential of Gaza's waterfront property and suggested that Israel should move the people out and then clean it up. The former White House intern, who is a real estate developer with no diplomacy or foreign policy experience, called on Israel to do its best to move those in Gaza to the desert in southern Israel. He added that with diplomacy, Palestinian civilians could then be moved into Egypt. A UN report, meanwhile, predicts that all 2.2 million people living in Gaza do not have enough food to eat, with half of the population on the brink of starvation and famine projected to arrive in northern Gaza anytime between mid-March and May 2024. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken added that 100% of the population in Gaza is at severe levels of acute food insecurity, adding that is the first time an entire population has been so classified. The UN human rights chief blamed Israel's sustained restrictions of aid into Gaza for the preventable starvation and famine that is unfolding in the enclave. Still, Kushner suggested that Israel has gone way more out of their way than a lot of other countries would to protect civilians from casualties.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.